Hilches Tumas Ochlin Perik Shmini. So this is coming b'hamshach that the Rambam said that legabe a tful yem, there's a certain kula, there's certain things which legabe other tumas would be considered mechuber and be all one piece, and if you touch one, so it's as if you touched all of them together. Masha'inkin, as far as a tful yem is concerned, so over there we consider them separate pieces. That was a kula in tful yem. And the Rambam will also discuss other things which legabe everything is considered separated, or legabe everything is considered connected. Perik Shmini. Chales or kikrim. Chales means when you were mafresh challah and it's still dough. Kikrim means it was already a baked loaf of bread. Chales kikrim shekonson. You put them together. They were like attached to each other, and they were actually stuck to each other. But v'daite lafrishin. Now they were stuck to each other. The Tiferes Yisrael says to the extent where when you're going to pull them apart, they'll take some off of each other. In other words, the mamish stuck together. Again, chalis kikrim shekonson. They were like biting at each other, which means that if you'll separate it, some of it will come off on the other. And v'daite lehafrishin, and your intent is to separate them. That's one situation. Oy sha'afa chala al gabi chala betaner, and v'adayin likarvu pana lepel, it didn't become brown. The top of the challah didn't become brown. So therefore, we neman bestam that you're not really interested in it being baked in such a manner because the heat can go in. So therefore, bepashtos it's daite lafrishin. The first case is we're talking about is beferish daite lafrishin. Over here, by ofa chala al gabi chala betaner v'adayin likarvu pana, we're assuming that it's daite lafrishin. Bestam it's daite lafrishin. And then v'noga tful yem ba'achas man. So the din is liposal el achala shenogaba. So legabi atful yem, we're considering them separate, even though they're noishchen zeh bezeh, and therefore the only thing that you were pesel was only the chala shenogaba. That's din number one. V'chein hamayim shirtichu v'nase kikuba. You have water that's cooked up, and it becomes like a large bubble, like a box, like the bubble on top is like a box. Or v'hagrisim shirtichu. Grisim is type of bean, which also shirtichu retichu rishena. In other words, once it was already cooked up more than once, so then the mixture becomes thick. So now when it bubbles up, so it's like more of a connection because it's a thick mixture, and the bubble is also very connected to the rest of everything. Masha'inkin, when it's the first bubbling, so really basically the soup is very watery. It's still very watery, the water. And therefore, so it's al derech v'mayim. So it's al derech v'mayim. That's hamayim she'irtichu v'nase kekuba, or v'hagrisim she'irtichu, the resicha rishena, and therefore it's not like a thick soup, or v'yayin chodosh v'oirez she'irtichu. Again, we're talking about the wine, since we're talking about yayin chodosh, so it's fresh wine. So also it doesn't have that thickness to it. So therefore, when it was cooked up, so that bubble that it had was more of a hollow bubble, and then the naga tful yem b'resicha, the tful yem was negeya in this resicha, so the din is any chibur, it's not considered a chibur, and therefore v'li pasal ela resicha b'lvat. The only thing that was paisel was the resicha. Now the mice is a tful yem is only paisel as a truma and kachim. So bishlam yayin you can have it in tziyas of truma. Masha'inkin mayim l'chur is you have a shayla. How could you have mayim that a tful yem is pasling? So the answer is they have to talk about mayim of Kedesh. You have to talk about mayim of Kedesh, and therefore he's being paisel this yayin, and Memela only that yayin is paisel, and that yayin is not going to be paisel any other yayin, or that mayim is not going to be paisel any other mayim. Memela it's going to become bottle in the mixture, because he was only, if the mixture has enough 100 kinegde to be mavatal it, so it's going to become bottle in the mixture. No, is any chibur v'li pasel or resicha b'lvat. That's talking about a tful yem. However, b'shar kol hatumas, all other tumas is ben kal, is ben chamur, is a kel chibur. So again, we're talking about there's a mitzvah of chalis kikres, which consum v'hoyu neishches v'daite lafridon. So over there, legabi a tful yem, it's not considered a chibur, and legabi others, it is considered a chibur. And al derech zeh, when you have mayim shirticho v'nase kekuba, and the other things that he mentioned, so also legabi tful yem, it's not considered a chibur. Legabi other tumas, it is considered a chibur. Avul chalis shohi neishchezu bezu ve'in daite lafresh. If he has no intention of separating, they're neishchezu bezu. They're connected one to each other. and ein daiti lahafrish, or a sha'afa chala al gabi chala, and the noshchu, the karma betamer, they were noshchu, and they were already karma betamer. They started becoming brown, so therefore bepashtas, you have no intention lahafrish, or sichas hamayim, she'enim mechul cheles kikuba, or if you have, let's say, a bubble, but the bubble is not so hollow. In other words, it's a bubble, it's bubbling, but it's not mechul cheles kikuba, which is like hollow, like a box. In other words, a large bubble, everything is hollow. Or sichas hagrisen shniya, or when the grisen starts cooking for the second time. So then the mixture is already a thicker mixture. Or sichas yayin yoshin, or we're talking about yayin yoshin, which is cooking up. Or sichas hashemen, ben yoshin ben chodosh, because shemen is always thick. Yayin, when it's new, it's still very, it doesn't have like a thickness to it. Masha'inkin shemen is thick right away in the beginning, or sichas adashim, or when you have lentils that you're cooking up. And over there, even the sichar rishena is already also thick. Is arei lechibur b'tful yem, then they are chibur even by a tful yem. And certainly by other tumas, and those something which is considered a chibur b'tful yem, it'll certainly be considered a chibur the other tefillos. The other tumas. Halacha beis. Botzeik shiyosza b'shas afir. You took a piece of dough and you're baking it. Let's say making a piece of bread, and lepel, some of the dough started sticking out of the rest of the dough. In other words, it's like inside the heat, some of the dough came out of this large piece of dough and it's sticking out. It's like a nail sticking out of the dough. So you have the dough itself, which was baked, the bread, and now you have a, so to speak, like a nail, something sticking out, which is made out of dough, obviously, which is sticking out of the loaf. V'chein, that another case, you have a loaf of bread, and then you have like a little piece of this loaf, which is like behind it. It's not mamish like attached to the loaf, it's a little piece which is flat attached to it, and that part became burnt while you were baking. So you have like, in other words, you have a piece of what has is a loaf of bread, and you have something attached to the loaf of bread, which originates really from that loaf of bread, but right now it's like a little bit separated. And this is called the churchor. Is if the size of this masmer or these chirchor was less than an etzba, so the vinogat full yembem pasuk kol kikar, because then it's considered part of the kikar. And since it's so close, it's such a small piece. So when you're touching it, so even if it's less than an etzba, samuch to the kikar is considered part of the kikar. V'chein im noga begarger melech cotton, if you have a small granule of salt, shebi kikar is also nifsal kol kikar. Ve'in tzarich leimar b'chol hatumas, and certainly b'chol hatumas, if someone other than a tful yem, other tumas touches this small garger melech or this chirchur or this masmer, which is coming out of the dough and it's less than the kibetza, certainly the entire kikar becomes tummy. Avol tzrei shebekikar, if you have a pebble, not a salt, but a tzrei shebekikar, a turmus, or you have like a bean, which is a type of bean, or the garger melech gadol, or a large granule of salt, or the chirchur, which is yesimik etzba, you have this piece sticking out of the dough of the bread, but it's more than an etzba. And shenogib mafilo avatuma is a kikar tur. So be'emes there's no legabi this din halacha beis. There's not no difference between a tful yem and other tmeim. By side by a tful yem and side by other tmeim, if this chirchur or this chirchur or this masmer is considered is less than an etzba, or we're talking about a garger melech cotton, so then it's nifsal kol hakikar side by a tful yem and side by other tmeim. However, if it's more than a ketzba, or if we're talking about a garger melech gadol, or we're talking about a tzerer, we're talking about a turmos, so then it doesn't become tummy even by other tmeim, and certainly by a tful yem. Halacha gimel rokik shenechra chetzia v'chetzi kayim. So before we were learning about a rokik that ktsas habosik is nimshach, and that part was nechrach, and over there was a shear of a ke'etzba. But as we're talking about a piece of botzik, which is like sticking out of the kikar. Over here we're talking about the actually rokik. You have, let's say, a flat bread, that's part of it, it got burnt. So if only a small part of it got burnt, so it's still considered one piece of bread, and mela, it's all a chibur. But if half of it got burnt, so that half that's burnt and the half that's not burnt aren't considered connected. That's the thing. Rokik shenechra chetzia, half of it got burnt, and v'chetzia kaim, and the other half is still intact. Is arezei in a chibur. Mashenkin, if it would be less than half, even if it would be more than a ketzba, because it's part of the rokik. You know, before we're talking about when it's out of the general isa, the general kika, but over here when it's part of the rokik, so until half we say it's part of, still considered part. Mashenkin, if it's half, then it's arezei in the chibur. Now nechra choetzba ha'emtza batzdodin kayom. You have like a flat bread, the two sides of it got burnt, and I'm sorry, the middle of it got burnt, and the two sides are still kayomin. So then einon chibur zelazeh, the two sides aren't considered a chibur when it's through the part in the middle which is burnt. Afilu ba'avatum, even where Tuman and Avatuma would touch this Michael. Whereas if you touch one side of this charara, which is the side that's not burnt, and then there's a part that's burnt, and then there's another part that's not burnt, so the other part that's not burnt didn't become tummy. Einam chibar zelazeh afilu ba'avatuma. Ve'ein tzarich lema b'tful yem. If a tful yem would touch one side of it, so only that side becomes tummy, and the other side, which is on the other side of the burnt part, is not tummy. Now, psar kodesh, shekoram olav hamorak. So you have like the gravy which is coming out of the basar, and that like congealed on top of the basar. And v'noga tfulyein bakipo, and the tfulyein touched that part of the gravy which congealed on top of the meat, on top of the flesh of the kodesh, is a chatichas mutaris. So the chatichas are mutar, because the chatichas is not considered one piece with the congealed part, with the marok, and it's certainly not bottled to the marok, so therefore the chatichas are mutaris. However, noge b'chaticha, if you touched the actual meat, so ha-chaticha v'chol ha'elon imu chibur. So anything that comes up with this chaticha, is considered bottled to the chaticha. So once you touch the chaticha, so the marok also becomes tummy. They also becomes tummy. V'chein b'tavshel kitnius shekaram al gabe prusas. You have a cooked beans like. So it became like a big soup, and now it congealed on top of pieces of bread. So that's the same din. The same din is if you touch the kidneys on top, the prusas don't become tummy. Mashenkin, if you touch the prusas, so those kidneys which are oil and ima becomes tummy together with the bread. That's this din. Now the Rambam said this din b'negei atful yem. The Rambam said atful yem. The pasha sounds like that if it would be a regular tamei, so it would become tamei even if he touched the marok. That's the pashtus. Now shemen shetzofal gabiyayin, v'noga tful yem b'shemen, le'posel ela shemen. So here it's a shaila: is the shemen and the yayin considered one thing? So we say no, that the shemen is tzofal gabiyayin, so therefore they're not considered one thing. So that shemen became tamei, and that shemen that becomes tamei is le'posel ela shemen. Only the tful yem touches the shemen, so the shemen becomes puzzle, but the yayin doesn't become puzzle. Now, by every other tummy, when a sheni, for example, touches mashke, so the mashke becomes rishon. So mele is really not shaykh as a metzias of this din, because if you have a din of a tummy touching shemen, so that shemen is going to become a rishon, so that rishon will be able to be metami the yayin. Mashenkin a tful yem, which is only poistless hashemen, he doesn't make the shemen into a rishon. So mele, so if the shemen and the yayin would be one, so then he would passel the whole thing. But since the halach is that's machlekes in Gemara, but since the halach is that the shemen and the yain aren't considered one, so memela the tful yem only passel the shemen, and the shemen can't passel the yain. Halacha dalet yerek shel truma ubeitza trufu unesun al gaba. You have a yerek shel truma, it means really a number of stalks of truma, like we'll see behemshach, and there's an egg, a scrambled egg that you put on top of these vegetables. Now, v'noga tful yem bebeitza, the tful yem touches this egg. So the question is whether the tful yem is passing the truma. So we say that the egg and the truma became united. Therefore, by touching the egg, it's as if he touched the truma, but only the truma which is directly under the place where he touched. So even though it's like one egg, and it's one egg, and over here, l'chura, the egg is over a number of stalks, so l'chura it should be considered as if he touched the entire egg, which is over all the stalks. We say no. The stalk which is directly under the place where the egg is, that becomes tummy through him touching the egg. But the other stalks, even though they're all also under the same egg, which that egg was touched, but nevertheless it doesn't become puzzle. Again, halacha dal. Yerek shel truma, you have stalks of vegetables of truma, ubeyet setrufa and sun al gaba, you have a scrambled egg over these vegetables, and v'naga tfulyem bebeitza, and the tfulyem touches the beitza. So the din is late pasel el kelek shenegda. So he does pasel the vegetable, even though he didn't touch the vegetable, but he touched the egg. But it's considered that the vegetable and the egg are united. But which vegetables? Only the vegetable which is directly under the place where he touched. Masha'inkin, the other vegetables, even though he touched the egg and it's one egg, but nevertheless the other vegetables is not tummy. Bimhoisa kimin koiva, and that's only talking about if the egg is flat on top of the vegetables. Masha'inkin, if the egg is like, so to speak, over the vegetables, but it's not directly flat over the vegetables, like a hat, which means there's airspace between the egg and the vegetables, and you went ahead and touched this egg, so then the vegetables aren't connected, and therefore the vegetables don't become tummy, don't become puzzle. Halacha hey, now chut shel beitza, shekaram al dafna shalifas. Again, over here we're talking about there's a vegetable in the pot, and you have a egg also in the pot, and like a part of the egg became attached to the side of the pot, and now the question is, by touching the side of the egg, are you making puzzle the vegetable which is in the pot? Chut shel beitza shekarim al dafna shel ilfis, and v'noga b'tvulyem. When tvulyem touched this chut shel beitza, and the question is chut shel beitza attached to the food which is in the pot? So min hasofa lifnim, if this chut shel beitza is on the inside of the pot, so it's in the inside of the rim of the pot, so then it's chibur. That's considered a chibur to the vegetable, and therefore the vegetable becomes puzzle in the pot. However, min hasofa lechuz, if it's this part of the egg which became attached to the pot is on the outside of the pot, beyond the rim of the pot, so then is ein chibur. That's not considered connected. And memela, by touching that, you're not going to really puzzle anything that's in the pot. V'chein bekitnius shekarmu asvas hakdeira is the same thing. So if you have kitnius which also became attached to the wall of the kedera, so if you touch on the inside, it's considered you touched all the kitnius because they're all attached. Mashenkin, if you touch on the outside, it's not considered attached, and therefore it doesn't puzzle what's going on inside. Now here, before we said that you had an egg, and that egg only puzzles what's directly under the egg. Over here, it seems to be that there's a chut shel beitza, and it's on the doifen of the ilfis, and it's puzzling what's obviously in the ilfis, not keneged habeitza, because if it's keneged habeitza, it might have kimina if it's on this side of the rim or that side of the rim. So the Rambam brings this kasha, and he says that over there we're talking about this taka number of stalks. So since there's a number of stalks, so we say only the place that you touched is tamei, but the other stalks are not tamei. Mashenkin, over here, there aren't a number of stalks. There's only one stalk. There's only one piece of yerek. And this piece of yerek has an egg attached to it. So that egg, even if it's not keneged akelach, so that also passes the kelach. So it comes out a chidush that we learned before, that in order, by touching the egg, you passel the vegetable. That's only when the vegetable is directly keneged the place where you touched. So now it's coming out that b'medvar mamurim, if there are more than one vegetable. So there was a place keneged the place where you touched. So the other places aren't considered puzzle. Masha'inkin, of this egg, there's only one egg, or it could be many eggs, but there's an egg, and there's only one vegetable, so that egg is definitely connected to this vegetable, and therefore when you touch the egg, you puzzle the vegetable, but that's only b'tnai that this egg should be on the inside of the pot and not on the outside of the pot. That's what comes out from it. Halacha vov. Chavis shenikva. If you have a barrel that got a hole in it, bein bishula, bein mitzida, whether from the side or from the bottom, and then the sasum tfulyem hanekev biyadav, and you used your hand, the tfulyem used his hand to close that hole, is nifsala kula, because lepel, everything that's in this barrel is considered one thing. So mele, by the tfulyem touching it, over here it's not psageder of a chibur. Everything in the barrel is one thing, so by the tfulyem touching it, So Mele, he passes it. That's a regular din, as if the Tful touched whatever mashka was in the chavis. That's Makabel Tumah. Halacha Zayin. Hama'ara Mikeli Mikeli. Person is pouring from one keli to another keli. And then the Naga Tful Yem Bakiluach. And the Tful Yem goes ahead and touches that stream that's going down from one keli to another keli. So we're talking about something that the Tful Yem could be matame, obviously Truma. So the din is Misharin Zesh Naga Be'echudumeyo. So we take a look, say, how much did he touch? How much did he touch? And then we mishayr, if the amount that he touched, there's 100 times as much of it. And if there is 100 times as much of it, is even though that part that he touched became tummy, but the part that he became tummy becomes bottle in 100 times as much of tahira. Now this shetruma tmeya shenesarve be'echudumeya bottle b'miyuta k'misha b'yanda b'hilchus trumas. Now the Rambam says this din is only by a tful yem. Now the pashtus of the din is this, not a psanu kula and tful yem. The pshat is, as we learned, we mentioned that a tful yem is poisel as a truma. He's not matami as a truma. A normal tame, when he's matami, mashke of truma, so the mashke of truma becomes a rishi. And since the any sheni that's matami mashke of truma, the mashke of truma becomes a rishi. Now, so if someone that would be tummy, someone that let's say need until she died, would touch this mashke, so then that would become a rishon. Now when that rishon goes down into the wherever it's going down, it's matami everything, because a rishon is matami all the other mashke. Masha'inkin or tful yem, it doesn't make it into a rishon. Or tful yem makes it onto a shlishi, which is puzzle. So therefore, it doesn't have bekeach to go ahead and be matami anything else. So now you have to be mashayir whether or not there's 100 times connected. If there's 100 times connected, then it could be bottled. Masha'inkin, if it would be another tamei, so it wouldn't be shaykh as the whole idea of bittul, because lepeo, it would be matami the other things. Halacha ches, tvul yem shehoyet teirem saber. You have a tvul yem that's being mafresh truma from a bear. So you have a bear of yayin, he fills up the bear of yayin, and he's mafresh a truma. And lepel, even though he was mafresh truma, he fills it up, there's nothing wrong, because at this point in time it's still chul, even if he touched the wine and the bear, it didn't become tamei. And now he has this yayin in this chavis, and he says that it's truma. He's mafresh that it's truma, and he doesn't touch it. If he doesn't touch it, everything is beseder. Now the naflu mimanu from this tful yem fell the chavish shel truma. This chavish shel truma fell. The shaka beber, it sank into the bear shel yayin. So now we have a metzias. You have a bear of yayin of chulin, and in this bear of yayin of chulin, you have a chavis of yayin shel truma, which is in this bear. And now v'noga b'yayin shebeber. This tful yem goes ahead and sticks in his hand into the yayin shebeber, which is attached to the yayin which is in the chavis. The yayin in the chavis is truma. So a tful yem could passel truma. A tful yem could not passel chulin. He stuck his hand into the yayin shebeber, and the yayin shebeber is attached to the yayin which is in the chavis, which is truma. So then is a min hasofer lechutz. If he never put his hand into the chavis, he's put his hand into the bear, but he never put his hand into the chavis, is a chibur. So it's not a chibur, and the the yayin shebeber is tor, and the yayin shebechavis is also tor, because the tful yem never touched it. However, min hasofer lefnim, if he put his hand into the barrel, so he actually touched the barrel, so then it's chibur. So then it's a chibur. Then it's considered that he. In other words, even what's the chiddush that if you put it in the barrel, the yayin and the chavis is takatruma. So the chiddush is that even if l'moshel the chavis was originally not a full chavis of yayin, so the amount of yayin which is on top of the chavis is really yayin of the bear, not yayin of truma. Because when he was mafresh truma, he didn't have a full chavis. So, but as soon as he puts his hands in the safel lefnim, so even though the wine that he's actually touching may be yayin of chulin, but nevertheless it's considered chibur, and memela, so he made that the yayin which is in the chavis should become possible. That's talking about if we're dealing with a bear. We're dealing with a bear in the ground. The Mhoya bear pitas. We're talking about the bear wasn't a bear in the ground, but it was actually a big keli. It was a keli that was above the ground, separated from the ground. It was metaltalin. Afila hoya keli godel shemagzik meyakur. So then it's kulei chibur. It's all chibur. So again, we have chavis, a chavis of yayin that's truma. So if a tful yem touches it, it becomes possible. A bear of yayin, which is chulin, if a tful yem touches it, it doesn't become possible. Now you have a chavis of yayin of truma that fell and it wasn't full, and it fell into the bear of yayin which is not truma, a bear yayin that's not truma. Now the tful yain went ahead and put his hand into the bear of yayin. So the question is that considered as if he touched the chavis, which is as if he touched the chavis, which is as if he touched the yain of the chavis, or not as if he touched the yain of the chavis. So now we're saying that if he put his hand into the chavis, even though he touched yain, which wasn't really truma, it was yain of the bear that filled up, let's say, the top half of the chavis. So it's considered mechuber to the chavis, and it's as if he touched the yain of the chavis, and all the yain of the chavis becomes puzzle. Masha'inkin, if he never stuck his hand into that chavis, so then the yain and the bear is pseida because that's chulin, and the yain and the chavis is also pseida because the tful yain never touched it. When we're talking about a bear, that's karka, that's a bear of karka. Masha'inkin, if you're talking about a big keli and have a chavis, a small keli falling into a big keli in the same exact story, so then we say that if the tful yain puts his hand into the keli, even if he never put it into the keli that had the truma, he put it into the big keli which had the yain of chulin, nevertheless that's considered a chibur to the yain of truma, and memeli he passes the truma. Now this din again is only by a tful yain, because if he's not a tful yain, so he'd be a regular tummy, and he sticks his hand into a bear of yain, so he sticks his hand in his bear of yain, so it passes the yain. So he would pass the yain, so then obviously the truma will become possible. The ganze chiddush over here is since we're dealing with a tful yain is not pesel yain, which is chulin. He's only pesel satruma. He's only pesel satruma, and he's only pesel satruma. So mele, so then that's the din, whether or not it's considered that he's touching the yain of the chavis or he's not touching the yain of the chavis. Halacha tes hasoilus shel menachis and v'halvoina, that's also the use for kachim, and v'haktoiris, and also v'hagecholim and coals, which of kachim, which normally coals are not mekabel tuma, but mitzad kodesh it's mekabel tuma. Shinaga tful yain b'miktsasam, so the din is pasal skula. So it's a special din that even though be'emes each particle is the chulchura separate, they're not really one piece. It's all small particles, flour and levena and the potatoes and even the gecholim. But nevertheless, there's a special din. If a tful yain touches even part of it, is pasal skuli, everything becomes pasal. And obviously, for another tummy as well. But the din is even by a tful yain. When do we say that by gecholim, that when you touch part of it, all of it becomes tummy? The gecholim which you take with the machta b'yem kippurim. Now in Yom Kippur they would take, the Kohen Gadol would take with the machta from the mizbech hachitzin, and he wouldn't change from this machta into another machta because of the ribi aveda that he had in Yom Kippur. They didn't want to give him extra aveda, so Meil he malchatchila used one machta to take from the gecholim which was alal mizbech, and that machta is the machta that he brought into the Beis into the Kedesh HaKadoshim. Every day when they would take with the machta of the mizbeach, they would take with a machta shel kesef, and then which had 4 kabin, and then they would pour it into a machta shel zov, which had 3 kabin, and whatever spilled out, they would put into the yama, into that water channel of water which went through the azara. That's what we learned. So Mela, when you take it with a machta al manas to go into the Kedesh HaKadoshim, or you have it in the machta shel zov, which is also you're going to go into the Kedesh, so then that this then applies, that it's all considered one thing, and when you touch one of it, all of it becomes tummy. Masha'inkin, when you take it in the original machta, which the machta shel kesef, or on a regular day, and you're intending to put it shel zov, and some of it is probably going to spill out, it's for sure going to spill out, and the mela, that you're going to put in, you're going to zerkel amma, so mela, that doesn't have that madrega of kedusha. And therefore, over here, this din that nogabit miktsasib is tummy kula doesn't apply. That's what we're learning here. Nachamo. By medvar mamurim, when do we say that yechalim is nogabit miktsasi is tummy pasal is kula? Yechalim shechete b'machti b'yim hakipurim. That yechalim shechete b'machti b'yim hakipurim. Memela shamachne shechete b'nichnas lahechel. With that machti is actually going to the hechel. Masha'inkan have yechalim shechete b'chol yem. The yechalim which he takes every day. When he pours it from the machta shel kesef shel zov, the chnispazim ha'gecholim is ein b'hem kedusha lemechabdon la'ama. So therefore, they don't have a din of kedusha. So this din that if a tful yain touches it, it doesn't have that madrega of kedusha because it's not going to go into the kedesh or into the certainly not into kedesh hakadoshim. So therefore, this special din that if a tful touches b'miktsasi pasal kuli doesn't apply to those gecholim which was taken with the kli kesef. Halacha yud mikpa shel chulin, a rakik shel chulin. If you have, let's say, a cereal, a cooked cereal would be a mikpa shel chulin, or a cookie of chulin, and v'shemen shel truma tzof al gabeim, and you have shemen shel trufa, which is floating either on this mikpa shel chulin, which is like a cooked food of chulin, or a cookie of chulin, and the shemen of truma on top of this mikpa shel chulin, the rakik shel chulin, v'naga tful b'shemen is like puzzle al Hashem bulvad. The chulin and the rakik don't become puzzle. They're not mitzdaref to the shemen of the truma. The chibetz. Now, if you mix them together, in other words, you mix the shemen together with this mikvah, or you mix the shemen together with the rakik, so kol makom shalom be Hashem puzzle. Wherever the shemen is puzzle, because the shemen is puzzle, and the shemen is considered mechuber to each other, even though chibetz. Masha'in kain, the rest of it is not really tummy. So if you never mixed it, it's only the shemen is puzzle. The rest of it is not puzzle. If you mixed it, so obviously wherever the shemen is, and you can't separate, so all of it can be eaten. Halacha Yud Aleph. Yerek shel chulin shebishlei b'shemen shel truma. You cooked a vegetable of chulin in shemen shel truma. V'naga beitful yem is le'pasel elamakom magoy. We don't say that since there's like shemen on the entire vegetable, so all of the shemen is connected. The place where you touched, where over there the shemen shel truma becomes puzzle, but the rest of it is not considered a mechuber to that shemen which you touched. Halacha Yud Beis. Hamikva shel truma. If you have like a soup of truma, v'hashum v'hashemen shel chulin, and inside you have shum and shemen shel chulin. Shenoga tful yem b'miktzasim, and even if you touched the shum and the shemen shel chulin, is puzzle as kulam, because since it's a mikva shel truma, it's one big soup. So memela, by touching any part of that soup, or even the shum and the shemen, which is in the soup, so that's bottled to the soup, memela it's laga as kulam, memela the whole mikva becomes puzzle. Fakert. If a mikvah shel chulin, if the mikvah was made out of chulin, and v'ashum v'ashem shel truma, and only the shum and the shemen are truma, since the mikvah is truma, so chulin, so the tful can't passel it. But on the other, the shum and the shemen is truma, so it doesn't become ois truma. So over here, in a shenaga tful b'miktzasim, if a tful touched part of this mikvah, is le'pasel elam mekem magoy, because since in that part where he touches, there is the shum and shemen shel truma, and it doesn't become ois, so therefore that part becomes puzzle. The other part doesn't become puzzle. In other words, we're not looking at the shum and the shemen, which is in this mikveh as one piece, and therefore the mikveh didn't become puzzle, but the shum and the shemen which he touched, which is in that mikveh where he touched, that becomes puzzle. Now that din is normally when you have the shum and shemen, which is less than the mikveh. Now it's a case a little bit strange. L'chura means that the shum is more than the mikvah. You have a bigger amount of shum, more garlic than the mikvah. So then it's helch nachar reiv. So we go basa the reiv, and if so memele faker, so the mikvah becomes bottled to the shum, and then when you touch, if a tful yem touches this mikvah, even though the mikvah is chulin and the shum is truma, but since the shum is merubah, so memele, so the whole mikvah becomes possible. That's this din. That's this din. Now, Emasai, when do we say that if the shum is meruba, so we say that the whole thing becomes puzzle? That's bisman shehu gush b'kaira. Weißt du, is the seder advarim is that the advarim say soon that you would grind the garlic, and then you would mix it together in a bowl, and you would make it together with oil. You'd put it together with oil, and it would become one hard piece. So then, at that point in time, so the garlic still retains its mitzias of being one piece of truma, because lepel the shemen is ma'ariv all the small pieces of the garlic which was ground. So now you have one big piece of truma, and then the mikveh is bottled to that garlic. It's hard for me to understand the tzir exactly, but that's the mitzias that we're saying. Bisman shogush b'kaira, the garlic became one piece in the kaira. But if the garlic was never really placed together to become this one piece, you took the garlic, which is truma, and you went ahead and you ground it in a meducha and v'noga b'miktsas, and you touched part of the garlic, is le'pasel el mekem magoy. Then even if you just have garlic, and certainly if you have put the garlic in the mikvah. Even if you just have garlic, or if you put the garlic in the mikvah, with nagel miksos, the apostle came magoy mipnei shureitze pizure. Since it never became one piece, he's reitze bepizure. So therefore, it's considered separate pieces. And since it's separate pieces, so when you touch one, it doesn't passel the other. Now, ushar kol anidechem, we're talking about garlic, which garlic is ground with shemen zayis. Now, ushar kol anidechem, shedar kol nedoichem b'mashken, other nidoichem, which the derech is also to grind them and then to mix them with mashken, kigoyin hashum b'shemen. Now, the word kigoyin hashum b'shemen means like. The word kigoyin, not for example. Over here we're talking about other nidoichem. But it means it's done, they're darken l'doichem b'mashken like. Kigoyin would be like kimoi. Kigoyin hashum b'shemen. So im dochon shalei b'mashken, if you went ahead and you would doch these things shalei b'mashken, or even if they were b'mashken, but they weren't a din mashken, in other words, they didn't have a din mashken, because mashken is only zayin mashken, and the kiptzon, and you put them together, afal pishen gush begaira, even though they became one, but it doesn't have a din of mashke, v'nogel b'em le'pasel el mekem agoy. Because the din is that when you have different particles together, so if they're together with mashke, like we learned before, so then they become one. And maybe when you touch one, you tam the other. Mashengen, if they're together without mashke, or they're together with something, with a liquid, but that liquid doesn't have a din of mashke, so then that's not considered together. Shareim ki igol shel dvela. It's just like you have a cake of figs. Shem nit mitzasel nit makuli. So that's this din. So in other words, this din that the shum becomes one and mele everything becomes bottled to the shum is only when we're talking about that the shum was put together b'kaira, and it was put together b'kaira with shemen zayis. So mele it became one thing. So mele it's makabel tumah. The whole thing becomes tumah, and then the mikvah also becomes bottled to this shum, which is merubah. So the tzir itself is hard to understand exactly what's this. Because we understand you have a soup, and you have it's shum and shemen. You have a shum merubah, and then you have the shum which is one piece, and it's merubah. It's hard for me to understand the tzir. Halacha yudalit. Isa shekara shem chalasa b'tzveinei b'dreima. You will carry shem chala, and a chala is a din of truma. You gave it a shem chala b'tzveinei b'dreima, and v'chein hakishus, which is also a vegetable. Shekara shem truma b'tzveinei b'dreima. So the din is areza chibur. Was tash chibur v'nogat fulyem b'miktzah se'isa. So the part of that's chala is on the tzveinei b'dreima. Now the tfulyem touched the other part of the isa. Is nifsala chala. It's considered a chibur. Mele it's as if the tfulyem touched the chala and the chala became possible. Now, however, that's talking about if he was mafresh the chala and the chala was still attached to the original dough. However, nitlo chalos miteich, if you detach the chala and then the chazr l'teich, now you connected it to the dough. In other words, you detached the chala, so now there's chala and chulin. And now you went ahead and took this chala and you connected it to the chulin, so then it's any chibur. So by the tfulyem touching the part that's chulin, it's not considered that he is touching the part that's the chala, and memela it doesn't passel it. Halacha tezvav. Isa shenidmo. You have an isa which has truma mixed into it. Eishin is chamtza b'se'er shel truma. It became chometz with se'er shel truma, and therefore you have to deal with it like truma, because it's the se'er shel truma is not bottled, because it's a maimed, it's something which is there. So it's einen nefselis with tfulyem. This din that a tfulyem is pesel satruma doesn't apply to an isa which is nidma, which you have to be noig with it like truma, but lepel it doesn't apply that it doesn't become puzzle, and al derazeh doesn't become puzzle when it became nischamtza with a se'er shel truma. Halacha tezayin. Isa shehuch shira b'mashkin. Knows it became huchshir b'mashkin. Knows it's makabel tuma. Aber v'nilation meiperis lepel. The dough wasn't made with water or with mashkin. It was made with meiperis. That has no din of mashkin. It's makabel tuma, but it's nilation meiperis. And v'noga b'tfulyem is leipasel elam became makoy bulvad, which is based on what we're saying, that when two things are connected, and then connected through something that doesn't have a din of mashka, that's not called connected. So when you make a dough out of water, with water, you mix the flour with water, or if you mix the flour with one of the other mashkin, the zayin mashkin, so then that's considered that it's mechuber. then all the particles of this dough, which is all the pieces of the flour, are mechuber. Masha'inkin, if they're together with meiperes that doesn't have a din of mashka, so it's not called mechuber, and therefore, if the tfuliyim touches one side of it, he only touched that part. That part that he touched became tamei. Why was it tamei? Because the meiperes aren't really machshir either. So that's why the Rambam starts off isa shehuchshir b'mashkin. There's other mashkin that were machshir. And lapel, it's connected through meiperes. Since it's connected through meiperes, so therefore it doesn't have a din of a chibur. And if you touch one side of it, only that becomes tamei, and the other becomes pasul, and the other doesn't become pasul. Halacha Yud Zayin. Meiser Rishon shehuchshar v'noga beitfulyim or yedayim mesuaves. Now, Meiser Rishon, as the Rambam will say b'hamshech, does not become pasul from a sheni. A truma could become pasul from a sheni, and it becomes a shlishi. That's a pasul. That's a din by truma. Masha'inkin chulin cannot become a shlishi. A chulin, mostly can become as a sheni. Now, there's a Meiser Rishon. Meiser Rishon has the din of chulin legabe this din that it cannot become a shlishi. And memele a tfulyim and alderes a yadayim mesuavis will not passel Meiser Rishon is nachamol. Meiser Rishon shehuchshar is Meiser Rishon is capable of being makabel tuma, but v'naga be tfulyim a yadayim mesuavis. So the din is mafrishim imenu trumas meiser betari. You could go ahead and still be mafrish trumas meiser from this meiser. Why? Nesha Meiser Rishon kechulin. Meiser Rishon has the din of a chulin. Utfulyim v'yadayim mesuavis ain't a person sachulin. They don't pass chul. Shashlishi bechulin tork mishabiyanu. So just like a yadayim suavis and a tvuliyim cannot pass chulin, so alderazei cannot pass Meiser Rishon. V'cheino isha she tfulasiyim. If you have a woman which is a tfulasiyim, and now we're not talking about necessarily Meiser Rishon. We're talking about as a isha she tfulasiyim is losha so so she goes ahead and kneads the dough. And v'keitzel challah, and she separates challah, umafrishaso, uminichasa bekeli, and she goes ahead and takes it away and puts it into a keli. So now they have the challah. She wasn't kair l'Hashem. The challah which is going to be kair l'Hashem, she put into a keli. V'nosnoso imshari isa ka'achas, and she puts it in a keli together with the others. Umakefes alakel kidei litim and and she puts everything together in order it should be litim and in other words, you want to be. When you mafresh the challah from the isa, you want that the challah should be next to the isa. You don't want to go ahead and have isa because l'chatchila you're supposed to be terim and amukiv. So you don't want to have challah in one place and the isa in another place and be kair Shem from challah which is one place to another place. So you put the challah next to the isa in a keli, and now you're being able to terim and amukiv. But the violet this challah you would never kair Shem. So Mele, until you are kair Shem, this tfulas yem didn't do anything to the challah because this it's chulin and tfulas yem doesn't pass chul. After everything is ready, the challah is ready to be called on challah, and it's all been amukiv. Achar kerel Hashem, she gives it Hashem challah. Veimeres harezu challah. Umishatikra Hashem. Once she gives it Hashem challah, is leitiga, but then she shouldn't touch the challah. Shaleitiv solena. V'kachi yese im losha ba'areva she tfulas yem. The case before we're talking about, she was a tfulas yem. What happens if she was kneading in a bowl which was a tfulas yem? So she's going to have to take the challah out of that bowl. In other words, the rest of the isa is going to remain in that bowl because the rest of the isa is going to be chulin, and chulin doesn't have a problem with being in a keli which is a tful yem because a tful yem doesn't pass with chulin. Masha'inkin, the part that she's in mafresh challah, she has to take out of that bowl and put it into another bowl, another keli, and put it next to each other. And then she's kair Shem, so this challah is no longer in the bowl with the tfulas yem, and then everything's besed. Then she could go ahead and take that bowl and give it. This time now she's not a tfulas yem, so she could go ahead and take that challah, do whatever she has to do with it. Halacha Yudches. Login shehu tful yem, shemilo michavis ma'aser shelim nitl chumas. You have a keli. Login is a keli, like jars, bottles. That these bottles have a din of their tful yem. You know, they were tummy and they were table in the mikvah. Now they're a tful yem. And now you have a barrel of meiser rishon shalim nitl chumasei, and now you're filling up these lugin with wine in order to be mafresh trumas meiser for the wine in the barrel. So you have lugin, which are a tful yem, and you're going ahead and you're taking wine out of the barrel of Meiser in order to be mafresh Tumas Meiser. But at this point in time, you're not being mafresh yet Tumas Meiser. You just have the wine ready to be kairel Hashem Tumas Meiser. Now, if you're going to go ahead and kairel Hashem Tumas Meiser on this wine in the Lugin, so the wine in the Lugin will become right away Truma, and it'll become puzzle from the Lugin, because the Lugin is Tvul Yeh. So what you want is that it should become Trumas Meiser when the Lugin are no longer a Tvul Yeh. So which means you have to be, it should become Trumas Meiser when it comes at night. When it comes at night, so the Lugin are no longer a Tvul Yeh. So at that point in time, there's no problem of the wine in the Lugin becoming Truma. Now, but you're doing it right now. So the ability is to say right now that tonight the wine in the Lugim should become Truma. And Memela, so it won't become Truma until tonight. When it comes tonight, those Lugim will already be Tahirim because they're no longer at Tvul Yem. It was already at night. Memela, everything is Beseder. That's this Halacha Yudches. Halacha Yudches. Lugim, Shehem Tvul Yem. You have bottles, jars, which are at Tvul Yem. Shemil'o, Michavis Maisa Shalinitlu Trumasei. Again, the Maisa doesn't become possible from a Tvul Yem. It doesn't become possible from a Tvul Yem. So Memela, by putting this Meiser into the Lugim, there's no problem. And Va'amar, now you say, Harei zu Trumas Meiser, Al Mashe B'chavis Achash Techshach. I want that the wine which is now in the Lugin should have a din of Trumas Meiser for the wine in the Chavis after it becomes night. So the din is Harei zu Truma Teira. So the wine in the Lugim are going to have a din of Truma Teira. Why? Since that's what he made up, that it should actually become Trumas Meiser at night. And once it becomes night, so those Lugim are already turned. So everything is besed. So at this point in time, there's wine in the Lugim, and there's wine in the Chavis, and Lepel, there was no really din of Trumas Meiser yet. There was no Afrashas Trumas Meiser yet. It was just pending. It was waiting for at night. At night, it'll be Chal, the Chales of Trumas Meiser. Now, Nishbara HaChavis came Shetechshak. If the barrel broke before it became night, before there became a Shem Trumas Meiser, it broke. So now we have wine in the Lugim, which were meant to become Trumas Meiser on the wine in the Chavis, but it can't become Trumas Meiser because there's no Meiser. It can't become Trumas Meiser when there's no Meiser. So Mela, what is this? Is Lugim B'Tivli. So the Lugim remain Tevel. In other words, they were supposed to become Trumas Meiser, but they can only become Trumas Meiser if the Chavis is still intact. If the Chavis is no longer intact, so now we have something which was meant to be Trumas Meiser, but all it is Meiser. It's Meiser, which you have to be Mafur, Shomit Trumas Meiser. That's talking about if Nishbar HaChavis. Nishbar HaLugim, if the Lugim broke. So Memela, since the Shem Trumas Meiser was never Chal on the wine of the Lugim, so Memela, HaChavis B'Tivla, the Chavis is still just regular Meiser Rishon, which you are in Mafresh, Trumas Meiser, because the Chales Trumas Meiser was only supposed to be Chal at night. Halacha Yutes, Tvul Yem Mitumas Mes Mabilas Nida, someone that's a Tvul Yem, in other words, he's saying from a Tumah Chamura, because he was a Tumas Mes, he needed Hazor Shlishi Shvi. On the seventh day he had Hazor and he went to the mikveh, but until it comes at night, he's still a Tvul Yem. So he's a Tvul Yem, Mitumas Mes. Now there's a Mabilas Nida, someone who's a Baal Nida, is tummy for 7 days. And now once he's Toivel, so again he needs Erev Shemesh. He needs Erev Shemesh after the Tefillah until he has a din of Torah. So until then he's a Tvul Yem. Is Oisa Beis Habad, he's allowed to work in a Beis Habad because a Beis Habad is Chulin, and a Tvul Yem doesn't pass on Chulin. The Cheishara Tmeim Shetovel, all Tmeim Shetovel, is Eisen B'Taris, could go ahead and do Taris. Because there's no problem, he's only a Tvul Yem, and a Tvul Yem is not possible, he only passes Truma. If it's Stam Taris, there's no problem. Now Chutz, Mizov, Vizova, B'Shvi Shalem. So a Zov and a Zova, which had Zayin Yom Nikim, and then on the 7th day, they could go to the mikveh. Sha'afal Pishatovle, they went to the mikveh on the 7th day, so then they have a din of a Tvul Yem. But nevertheless, liyasu b'veis habad v'liyasasku b'taris. Why? Koshem yiru v'nimtzu tmeim mafreya shari seis nakel k'mishu b'yana. In other words, if lepel taka, they won't see anything on that day. So maybe right now they have a din of a tvul yem. A tvul yem is taka not pesel. Only pesel is a truma. But if lepel, there'll be yira on the hamshach of the day. So it's going to come out of mafreya that there was never zayin yom nekim. So if there's no Zayin Yom Nikim, so they have a din of a Zov and a Zov, so all the wine will become tummy. So it's technically, there's a possibility that it'll become tummy. A normal Tvul Yem is a Tful Yem. He's not becoming Tommy and Mafreya. He's a Tful Yem. Of course, he can become Tommy, but he's not becoming Tommy and Mafreya. The fact that he's now in a massive Tful Yem, that's it. Mashenk and Azov and Azova, he's Taka Tful Yem. They're a Tful Yem. But on the other, it's a Tful Yem, which is pending. They have to wait until the night to make sure that they have the full Zayin Akiyim, and only then is Nizgal and Muslim afraid that they were Taka Tful Yem, and they didn't passel the Beis Habad.